Good morning, everyone. It is 4:40 p.m. I've already recorded this video once, but I think I'm going to start over from the beginning because some of my house rules are too weird. You all only need to know about the ones you might use, and I can make another video talking about the ones that are so idiosyncratic that there's no reason to release them on the internet. I have a very weird DMing style. I grew up playing 5e, and I've read 100 other games since then. I've played maybe 15, and every time I steal little snippets, but a lot of my house rules are just things I made up to suit very particular needs. I have a weird DMing style. I don't run a lot of classic fantasy, but I still use 5e for some reason, and so I have to be very adaptable because of that. I have to come up with house rules that allow me to create a lot of weird characters. Like, I have 60 classes in my game that I allow, and that's a ton. And I'll make another video about those because a lot of those I think you guys could really use. My game's gotten a lot better since I introduced more classes. Laser Llama, Kibbles Tasty, Mage Hand Press. Go read all of them right now. That's the majority of it. Laser Llama and Kibbles Tasty's classes even come with feats that you can give the other classes. Oh, starting feats. That's my first house rule. Starting feats. They're great. Use them. That one's not weird, though. That one's something that everybody knows about. Okay, my first weird house rule. No scores, just modifiers. It only works because of my weird XP system, but basically I found a way to fit the progression so that you only ever go up in 2-step increments, and my starting array of stats is 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6. It's a bad standard array, but I think weaknesses are interesting. If your barbarian has a -2 in charisma, the scene where you're all at the noble's ball just got a lot more interesting. If your wizard has -2 strength and everyone's jumping across a chasm, I don't know, it encourages teamwork, it encourages different solutions to problems other than just rolling high, and that's the point of the game, coming up with these solutions. So my characters have worse stats, but they're all even, they all move in even increments, and because of that, I might make a video about my XP system sometime. It's really weird. You can buy feats rather than leveling up, and you can do all sorts of weird stuff. I use a couple talent trees. I'll link, there's the one that everybody knows about. I'll link that below, but there's also Spheres of Might, which was originally a Pathfinder thing, but it's like weird special abilities for marshals. It's really fun. You should check it out. This is all very overwhelming, so we're going to start doing a numbered list, and I might actually have to start a tally mark because I'm very bad at keeping track of the numbers when I do these. Okay, house rule 1. Anytime you take a fighting style, skill proficiency, spell, basically anything you choose from a list, you're not limited to your class's list. You can choose from anything in the game. 1, this makes adding homebrew spells easier. 2, it makes characters more customizable. When you play the same class twice, a lot of times it feels like playing the same character. And having your characters feel unique from each other is a good way to get into a new genre. You know, if you have familiar mechanics to rely on, like if you have sneak attack in a fantasy game and then move to a sci-fi game, you're going to feel the same, and you're going to have trouble making the mental shift to the new genre. So customization is king, especially in character creation, if you're trying to go to a lot of different interesting worlds. Wizards can't take healing spells. There's a few mechanical things that actually affect the balance of the game, but for the most part, spell lists aren't necessary. When you're reflavoring your spells all the time, I've had several full casters, they just have weird little gadgets and weird little gizmos, and maybe it's a unique fighting style, maybe they call on dinosaurs to throw people up into the air, maybe they have potions that they throw. When you have as many weird casters as I have, the ability to choose from more spells is always helpful. Also, Laser Llama's classes add a ton of cool new fighting styles that you should have access to. And untethering skill proficiencies from class means you can make more unique characters. There's no balance reason that a wizard can't have stealth. Casting stat is untethered from class. Charisma, wisdom, and intelligence are basically interchangeable for balance purposes, so anytime you use one of them for a class feature, you just use your highest one. That's true for spellcasting, that's true for some other stuff, as long as it's not two different stats within the same class, because then there's like the actual stat investment of getting both of them that high. But for the most part, they all pretty much do nothing inherently other than skill checks. And so switching them out just gives you more adaptability. It allows more multi-class builds, which good. And if you're switching your stat around, you probably want to switch your saves too. The common saves are dexterity, constitution, and wisdom, and the other three are more uncommon. Each class gets a common save and an uncommon save. So for balance purposes, if you're switching your saving throws around, you get two saves. One of them's helpful, one of them's not really helpful at all. Sources of power. Oh, I'm not doing numbers. I forgot about the numbers. Whatever. Sources of power is not a rule, it's more of a philosophy. Basically, when you go to as many different genres as I do, it's important to untether spellcasting, the mechanic, from magic, the world building thing. Magic is just something that the inhabitants of the world don't understand. Magic is just undiscovered science. Or if you're doing something weird like eldritch horror, maybe the magic is undiscoverable science. Maybe it's something that can never be understood. But spellcasting to me doesn't need to be inherently magical. Spellcasting is just a way to represent any weird ability your character might have. If your guy has like tentacles in his back, you can take Arms of Hadar, Dead Mist Lash, which I think is from Valda's Spire. You can take spells to represent things other than just having a book and being a smarty pants about spells. And even if you are just going to play a classic wizard, have something you specialize in. Make it more interesting. Maybe you brew potions and throw them at your enemies to do fireball. Or maybe you carve runes into stuff. Maybe you specialize in fire magic or shadow magic. Maybe you can only cast during the night. Make it weird, make it cool, make it interesting. Sources of power is the idea that you get all your magic from the same one place, and all your magic has the same one feel to it, but it's not magic, it's spell casting, the mechanic. It gets complicated. Six. Maybe. I don't know. If your source of power, this one's a real rule, not just a philosophy. If your source of power would allow you to do something in the narrative that you don't have a mechanic for, you can spend a spell slot and make an ability check about it. Basically, it's just to allow your character to feel more grounded in the world. It's a free-form magic system tacked on top of 5e. Make sure that you're not giving the players effects that are too powerful, and make sure you're setting the DCs pretty high because, again, they already have a full spellcasting system. Since my stats are bad, since you get a 6, since I just use modifiers, since you get a -2, it should hurt no matter where you put it. There should be a punishment for having a -2 in a stat. And there's definitely a punishment for taking a -2 in Dex or Con. There's definitely a punishment for taking a -2 in Charisma, and there's kind of one for putting it in Wisdom. Strength and Intelligence, though, if they don't interact with your class features, there's really no reason not to have them be the dump stat. So, you add half your Strength modifier, rounded up, to your Speed. It makes Barbarians faster. It ties your speed to your athletics score, which makes sense. I don't know. It just generally feels like a good change. It makes wizards really slow, but that's fine. Because intelligence also gets a buff. You add your intelligence modifier, divided by 2, round up, to your base skill proficiencies. Number 12. Hitdice are weird. So I replaced them with the recovery pool. This one's weird and I haven't playtested it yet, but it sounds good in my heart, so I'm gonna tell you about it. You get a second pool of hit points, just as big as the first one, instead of hit dice, called the recovery pool. When you short rest, you can move hit points from the recovery pool to the main pool. Yeah, that's it. And when you long rest, instead of regaining full health and half hit dice, which nobody does anyway, because that's inanely complicated. What does that word mean? I can't tell if I've been using that word right or not. I've completely lost track of what I was talking about. Long rests. When you long rest, you don't get back full hit points. You get a number of points equal to your max that you can use to heal. The rest go into your recovery pool. And, I'll get into this later, you can spend 10 to heal a wound. You can heal wounds on short rests too. It costs 10 recovery points. Wounds are kind of like my death saves. They're really cool. Again, I'm just thinking about this. I haven't tested it. It would be fun if you could spend recovery points to do other stuff, like get advantage on attacks, gain movement, do other, I have a table of things that I've come up with, but it's not balanced at all. If you're going to do that, you should just come up with your own. 2-weapon fighting now works with ranged weapons, and it's pretty cool. Read Valda's Spire. Ooh, this one's real fun. Offhand is a new weapon property. Take any light weapon and decrease the damage by 1, either by stepping the die down or just decrease the average damage by 1. Then you can dual wield with that weapon even if your main weapon isn't a light weapon. So you can finally do rapier and dagger, or like rapier and pistol, or like big old gun and a little combat knife. It has potential. It has fun opportunities. Death. Number 57, or whatever I'm on. Death is bad. Don't do it. You cannot be revived. Character death should matter, and there's too many ways to just get him back, So PCs definitely can't take any spells that just picks a dead guy back up off their feet. Revivify is out for sure. Because then the moment of a character's death is not the dramatic part. The passing of the 1-minute deadline is the dramatic part, and that is not dramatic or interesting at all. There's no chance. There's no randomness, I don't know. It's possible to make it interesting, but it's better to just take it out, in my opinion. You might be able to bring someone back from the dead. I don't know. It depends on the story, not the mechanics. Instead of normal death saves, you get wounds. If you start your turn at 0 hit points, or you take an action, bonus action, or reaction at 0 hit points, note that did not include movement. You can move while you are downed. That's big. Or if you suffer damage while at 0 hit points, you suffer a wound. You take a wound. Wounds work kind of like 1 D&D exhaustion. They just subtract 1 from every d20 you roll. They're basically death saves. As long as you're at 0 hit points, you can push yourself and keep fighting, but you're going to get torn up quick. And wounds persist till the next short or long rest, when you can spend 10 recovery points to get rid of the wound. When you start your turn at 0 hit points, after suffering a wound, you roll this guy. This is a Christmas present I got. This is the coolest thing I own. It was like $5. And it was so cool that I started tinkering with death saves, because it's always a thing that's bugged me a little bit, but I had to use this die. So when you start your turn at 0 hit points, first you take a wound, then you roll the die of dying, of doom, or whatever. I need to come up with a name. And then if you roll your number of wounds or lower, you start dying. You can only start dying on the start of your turn. And if you get to the start of your turn next round and you're still dying, you die. The only way to stop dying is to heal up from above 0 hit points or get stabilized by Spare the Dying. Basically, that's when you start making death saves and you automatically fail all of them. The stabilized condition doesn't exist. I don't like people dying unconscious. When you drop to 0 hit points, your character death should be dramatic. Since I have this interesting wounds system, where hit points can actually represent like fighting and luck and heroism and whatever else hit points are supposed to represent, and wounds can represent your physical body taking damage, fall damage does wounds now. Every 10 feet you fall, you get a dex save at the bottom. If you fail it, you take a wound for every 10 feet you fell. If you succeed the save, you take a wound for every 20 feet you fell. But now 18th level fighter can't just jump off a cliff knowing they have enough hit points to take the fall. Fall damage, lava, other environmental effects do damage directly to your wounds. So you need to be really careful. This makes the game a lot more lethal. It makes pushing enemies off cliffs always a good idea. It feels scary, which I think is definitely a good thing, because when you get up there in like hit points and you're just not scared of anything, falling into a spike pit will still kill you. While you are at 0 hit points, you have the downed condition. While you are downed, you are prone and cannot stand up. You do not provoke opportunity attacks. You can move at half speed due to being prone. But doing anything else, action, reaction, bonus action, immediately gives you a wound. I don't think I actually know the official rules about like a healer's kit, but in my game, anyone can make a medicine check to pick up a downed PC. DC 10, if you succeed, they get 1 hit point, because stable at 0 can't exist in this system. Number 704, Last Stand. Last Stand is an anti-TPK mechanic. It's a guaranteed dramatic death for your players. It's an interesting decision that is available anytime. I love it. It's a great mechanic. I don't remember where I got it from. I don't know if I made it up. Well, I definitely didn't make up the idea, but I may have made up the details. At any time, you can choose to do a last stand. You clear all negative conditions. You gain 1 hit point. So if you were at 0, you get back up. And this can be during an enemy's turn. This can be during your own turn after you've done some stuff. This can be any time. You immediately take a full turn. Even if you had just taken a full turn, you do action, bonus action, movement. You automatically roll the highest number on any die you would roll. You crit on everything. You get max damage on all of your dice. If you need to attempt some crazy skill check, as long as a nat 20 would pass, a nat 20 passes. And then, at the end of that turn, you die. So if you're on your last legs, you can save the party. If people start going down in combat, when you see that you're going to die, you can just decide to do a last stand, and you don't lose anything because you were going to die anyway, but your last stand can buy the party time to get away. So now your fights can be as lethal as you want, and you guarantee you're not going to TPK. Almost guarantee. It means that character deaths are going to feel impactful. It means that you get to do dramatic last words. You get to do all kinds of stuff that you see in movies. It's just better. It's just more interesting than bleeding out unconscious and like failing 2 death saves on a nat 1. The death save mechanics are bizarre and not cinematic and not interesting. This is better. Initiative. This one's real weird. This one might not be for every table. I have a lot of rules about initiative. I'm probably going to do a whole separate video about my initiative system. But basically you roll initiative every round. But for my more normal campaigns, the initiative rules that I use are I set a DC for the encounter. There is a flat initiative DC. All of the monsters act on initiative 15, basically. And the players roll initiative. Anyone who passes initiative can act immediately, and then the monsters go. All of the players act, all of the monsters act, all the players act. So, you enter like group-based initiative after the first round, but people who have buffs to initiative still get good stuff for it. And the line between someone jumping out and ambushing the party and you guys being in full tactical combat is much thinner. It's a much smoother transition. Skill challenges, minions, some other stuff from 4th edition. Go watch Matt Colville's video about all this. It's great. It's super smart. My favorite thing in the world, this maneuver system. Before attacking somebody, you can declare that you're trying to kick them over, disarm their weapon, like stab their eye out, like literally do anything. You can declare any kind of maneuver. And then if you hit, before rolling damage, the enemy has to choose whether to take the damage or the effect you proposed. Because it's based on the damage numbers you already have, it's guaranteed to be balanced. It's like the one kid cuts, the other kid picks the part they want, right? It's a perfect system. It's guaranteed to be fair by its very nature. And you can use it for anything. You can do any effect. One of my favorite examples is like a rogue dropping down, getting sneak attack damage on a guard, and declaring that they just want to like put their hand over their mouth and like drag them into the shadows. If there's a chance the rogue might get enough damage to kill the guard will just submit and get dragged away, and like you didn't need to use any weird other mechanics for that. It just works. The other example is like a duelist putting their rapier to someone's throat. Like you can force surrender. If they're really low on HP, you can put a sword to their throat and like make up whatever conditions you want. But the conditions I normally use are like, if they move, you immediately get crit damage on them. So they agreed to take this condition on, so you can come up with whatever rules you want, but you can put a blade to their throat and force surrender. You can do so much more dramatic stuff. Like if you get an enemy down to 1 hit point, you can basically choose to do whatever you want with him by forcing this maneuver system, unless they're super loyal, in which case it just interacts with the story in such a cool way. Fumbles. They're interesting. Some tables don't use them. I've found some that I like. If you get a nat 1 on a ranged attack, there is a chance, I guess like a 50% chance, flip a coin, whatever, that you hit an ally who's in that melee. And if you get a nat 1 on a melee attack, then you provoke an opportunity attack from your target. The correct way to do flanking, you get a +1 for every ally that's helping you flank someone. That way you don't get like a conga line down the middle of the board, but you make positioning matter a little more. You also get a +1 for like height advantage or any other like minor thing that the DM might want to benefit. This does mess with bounded accuracy just a little, but I think it's worth it for the amount of tactical resolution you can get. Solid hits. Oh, I completely forgot about the numbers. Number 12 million, solid hits. Solid hits are one of my favorite mechanics. They're like crit effects, like extra stuff you get on a critical hit, except it doesn't interact with expanded critical range. So like the Mage Hand Press Gunslinger isn't broken by this. It has to be a nat 20 on an attack roll. And when you do it, when you get a nat 20 on an attack roll, and I'm thinking about maybe nat 1 on a saving throw can also inflict this, but balancing that's complicated. When you get a solid hit, based on the damage type, you get a different effect. I will list all of the effects. I think they're balanced. They scale with level. I love it. I love it so much. It makes all the damage types feel more unique. If you're playing if you have a bunch of fire spells, you can set stuff on fire and feel like a pyromancer, If you have a bunch of fire spells, but you switch the damage type for acid because there's really not that enough acid spells in 5e. Like, you can like melt through people's armor. The acid effect is reducing armor class. Like, it feels better. It gives you, there's 13 different damage types. As soon as you implement solid hits, you basically get 13 times as many spells and 13 times as many weapons. Anytime you take a weapon, you can switch its damage type among the physical types. And bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing all have 2 different solid hit effects that you can choose to make them more versatile. And anytime you choose a spell, you can switch between the energy damage types, which is everything besides those 3. Number 13 million, momentum. I don't do inspiration. I forget to hand it out. I kind of disagree with it. It's just, I don't know, it makes it feel too gamey to me. But momentum is my version of inspiration. Basically, the only way to get momentum is by taking a super fast turn in combat. When you get momentum, you can modify one roll, whether it's like a damage roll or an attack roll or like anything. You can modify one roll you make on your next turn by 1. And if you like finish your turn in like 30 seconds, or like if you have a like super fast turn, you get momentum. Basically, this is just going to mean that everyone is taking their turns faster. So you cut through the slog, you get more interesting combats. Because it modifies to hit rolls, you hit more, so combats are over faster too. It makes it more intense. I'm on to the last few. These ones are just about movement, like tactically moving around the battlefield, because I think that's important. Standing up from prone triggers opportunity attacks, and it always costs 15 feet regardless of your speed. The length of a jump in feet is the required athletics check to make that jump. I know there are ways to calculate it, but I don't like that they give you consistent numbers for how far you can jump. Jumping across a chasm should be interesting. You know, there should be a chance you can fail, because that's very cinematic. And a new reaction added to everyone, just in case you don't make that jump across the chasm, is catch. Anytime you move past something with forced movement, you can use your reaction and make a check to try and grab onto it and stop yourself. So if you're going over a ledge, you can roll to try and grab onto the ledge. DC 10, pretty easy. But if you go by another player on the way there, they can use their reaction to try and catch you too, so you get 2 chances. That's big. The last one is that there are only 4 types of armor, because I don't use gold pieces a lot, and I don't like that the balance is affected by how much money you have. Light armor is 11 armor class plus dex. It's exactly the same as leather in the base game. Medium armor is 12 armor class plus dex, maximum of 2, but you take 1 less damage from every attack. This is not area effects. This is just things that go through your armor class, deal 1 less damage. And you get a 5-foot reduction to your speed, but because strength score modifies speed, for most characters that's not going to be a problem. And heavy armor is 13 armor class, and it cannot be modified by dex. You can still take a shield to get up to 15, but you get a reduction of 2 from all attacks. I've done a lot of math on this, and I've really been trying to get it to work. As long as your enemy's attacks average around 10 damage, which is about where mine are at, this system works perfectly. So I'm now consciously trying to keep it there, because I really like the idea that an unarmored barbarian and a heavily armored fighter don't just feel different on their turn, but they feel different to hit. The unarmored barbarian is faster because he has a high strength score, and he doesn't... Oh, and the heavy armor is a 10-foot movement reduction. But I like the idea that your armor class is actually how hard you are to hit, and then damage gets reduced. This is a system a lot of people have tried to make, and there's not a popular one around, which I think means that this is a hard thing to balance, but I tried to balance it as best I could. As long as your enemies average a +5 to hit and average 10 damage on their attacks, it should be fair. It should work perfectly. I've run the numbers so many times because I've wanted to have this for a while, but I think it should work. Okay, that was take 2. I did rush a little bit, but the last one was too long. So we'll see how it went. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you start using any of these rules, I guess. And let me know if there are any other rules I mentioned in this video that you want me to go into more depth on. I know I'm going to do my initiative system because I found a really fun way to have like bosses telegraph their attacks. Like there's a narration at the beginning of the scene that tells the players what's going to happen, and then players who beat initiative that round get to act before. It's a weird system, but I really like it. Okay, see you around.